we're doing a giveaway, and it is right in here. You want to see what camera it is? It's not an FX6, I promise you that. Hasn't even been released. Yes, it is a Blackmagic Pixis camera, 6K. You can't get your hands on them right now, but we've been promised to have one of these delivered to us. We're doing a giveaway. All the information is down below. But let's talk about today's video. One of the challenges in filmmaking is shooting in very plain, boring locations and having to make them look dynamic. And in today's video, I have one of the experts at solving this problem, Nik Pilecki, in our studio for the Cinematic Eye course, talking about just this, taking normal locations and making them look cinematic. And he did this recently on a McDonald's commercial, that he took this very plain white studio and made it look like a completely different room with just a few tools. And this is actually a tutorial that we took directly out of our course, the Cinematic Eye. We're giving it to you today for free, the full video. It's one of almost 80 videos in the Cinematic Eye, which is a complete in-depth course about all things cinematography for all skill levels, from shooting scenes with just one light to using a full crew with a full gear package. And if you like Nik's work, you'll see him often in the Cinematic Eye. He does full in-depth breakdowns of short films he shot on shoestring budgets to some really cool high-end commercials. And the Cinematic Eye is actually part of a broader academy called The Art of Documentary. If you haven't heard about it, you probably haven't been on this channel for a little while. We're reopening the doors for The Art of Documentary. We have 5 courses, almost 340 videos now. Maybe I'm overestimating. 330, I think, was our last total tally count for all of the in-depth tutorials. But when you're part of AOD, you get to be part of a global community of filmmakers. You get lifetime access to our Facebook group where you can get feedback and talk to other filmmakers, connect with them. We even send you money if you meet up with 3 or more AOD filmmakers in your city. And there's over 6,500 AOD filmmakers now around the world, so there's a good chance that one of them will be in your town. Just want to let you know that the doors are opening September 10th, and we'll be having our early bird discount. This is up to 35% off for the courses. If you want to take your storytelling to the next level, if you want to learn how to run your business better and make more money as a filmmaker, but also get through that edit, not get stuck in the midst of a film that you're working on or a short content piece, then AOD is for you. And I'm here to answer any of your questions about filmmaking, whether you're in the course or not. So leave a comment down below or go message us on Instagram, and don't forget about that giveaway. But I want to get out of the way because I want to get to the tutorial, but I'll tell you a little bit more about Art of Documentary at the end of this video.
With the new McCafe Premium Instant Coffees. They're instantly delicious.
Wow, when I look at that commercial, I say, what a beautiful location. You would be wrong. This is what Nik Pilecki was dealing with.
Yeah, the location basically looked like an out-of-business IKEA, where you're like, did this used to be something?
Yeah, what is this?
Or actually, it looked like one of those places where you go to like buy a kitchen, and it's like they have a mod, like check out countertops and samples.
Yeah, exactly, right. The first point we want to make with this, we'll get into all the robotic arm stuff and all this, but you see this location, this is Nik's Scout, it's ugly. Flats are your friends, and we're not talking about the shoes that women wear when they want to dance at a wedding. What is a flat, and why did it save you on this shoot?
Yeah, so for budgetary reasons, the production company was like, we own this studio or have access to this studio, so it costs us $0 to shoot here. So that's a big incentive, because sometimes location costs you $5,000, $10,000 for a day. So they're like, can you make this work? And usually when someone in a production says, can you make this work? They're not really asking you, can you make this work? They're asking you, how can you make this work?
They're kind of saying, can you make this work, as in, if you can't, you're not working on this. So
yes.
Can you personally, can you say yes right now?
Yes. So obviously I was not stoked if we see some of the Artemis pictures. It's very much like a cinematographer's nightmare in terms of like white walls. no motivation, inopportune posts. Immediately I talked to my production designer and I was like, how much would it cost to get a flat brought in? Because there was no windows in the sections that we needed to shoot this. The basic concept for the ad is we're having coffee in the morning. So it's not like I could switch the action to be at the front where the windows are. It has to be with countertops and cabinets and that like has to be a kitchen. There's no way around that. You're stuck in that position.
So you decided to bring in these flats with these giant windows. Why is that? Just now because you're tired of just all these white walls, you wanted something, or that you can push light through them?
I did it so I could push lights for it because like I'm a big sucker for like as soon as you can motivate one light in your scene, your viewer is almost like every other move you make can be sold off that. But if I just had like a big key light coming from the side and I never got to see that window to justify the key light, it would look more like a studio interview.
Yeah.
And so all I needed was that glimmer of like, hey, there's sun coming from this window. And then now you've set a key side, a fill side, you have a 180 and you can start making coverage around and having it all like make sense.
Amazing. One thing I just wanted to point out is you have this room here and you have all this space here. And sometimes as cinematographers, we think, ooh, depth. But what I feel like you did is you said, no, I'm going to throw a wall in here and I'm going to be able to do whatever the heck I want. You have all this space behind here. You have this whole room to work with. And really, this was a macro commercial at its primary.
Yep.
It was more so about this product. So it doesn't seem like you're as concerned about creating a room full of depth because you're not having people move around a space. It's about the gimmick is the robotic arm, the product, and the camera moves.
Yeah, so and like I think that's an important thing as like a creative cinematographer. When you look at the concept, like you kind of want these big, vista shots in all your things. And the creative for this one is people enjoy coffee in the morning. That's it. It doesn't go deeper than that. So you kind of are like, well, the coffee's kind of the star here. So how can we jazz that up? How can we make the shots more interesting given the limitations of, the location, the fact that we have to have a pour shot, we have to have a smell the coffee shop, we need to have a sip shot. The first part of the creative deck was for person opens cupboard and reveals which coffee they want to choose. And as a cinematographer, I'm always trying to pull people off the wall. So being told like your first shot has to be inside a cupboard, I'm like, so we're already 1 foot against a wall. It'll be white inside that cupboard. So I was like, how do you make person opens cupboard interesting? And that's kind of, I like those challenges.
And so you decided to do a camera move from that.
Yeah, so this is where I was like, okay, if we're saving money on the location, can we get the robot arm out, which is basically the Moco motion-controlled robot arm where your camera goes on this 3-axis programmable robot arm and it moves in real time and it's extra repeatable. So I was like, what if we have the camera swoop across the countertop as our foreground, go over our talent's shoulder, and then at least then it's interesting as we're entering the world of the coffee. Like it's almost like the tail of the coffee and we're entering their world.
It looks like because of timing for, I'm sure because the client would want more of their product and more of their logo, I'm sure you had a bit more on the front end of this because it feels like we're coming in halfway through a move here. Was this chopped up?
Yeah.
Like originally where you landed on something?
No, there was definitely a little off the front end. That clip was already coming in at around 4.5 seconds, so that's where we could trim.
Which is an eternity in commercial world.
A really difficult move with cameras at a lower budget level is jibs, up and down moves. Very difficult. We can do left to rights really easily because it's within our plane to move our feet.
Yeah.
But as soon as you see a camera go really fast, 3 feet up,
you're fighting
3
gravity
feet
now.
Down, and to make that smooth, like we can't do that as well with our arms. So when I had the robot arm, I was very conscious and like, oh, well, let's have the camera doing a lot of vertical movements. So there's one shot where we go from the Nescafe machine up to the guy's face, and it doesn't seem that impressive, but to do that shot to
that
land
quickly
that's where it's like you almost can't do that with another piece of equipment. You can basically keyframe in the feathering to like hit your mark, and it's like to land on the end frame you just would never, it would take you 30 takes, and then
Yeah.
the actor's timing would be different every time. The coffee would look weird on the one take you like, and McDonald's was like, well, there was a weird dribble on the side, and you're like, no.
Yeah. And you can see these, you're not speed ramping these moves. They're actually going that quick.
That's all in camera.
That's great. And then you're nailing it in camera, and then which allows your editor to cut for story and not for having to be all stuck in After Effects the entire time.
I've only worked with the robot a couple times, so a lot of times like that seems as like a very daunting thing to, they're like, well, I have no idea how this works. So this is very foreign to me. I'm going to screw it up. It's going to mess with my day. A big thing that I do whenever I'm doing specialty op stuff, whether it be Steadicam, Techno Crane, the robot, it's not my job to understand how it works, but it is my job to communicate with the specialty op to understand what I have in my head and to see what isn't capable on a shoot. So for instance, on this shoot, I was like, hey, can we have the camera on a 75 mil go from up here to down here? And the op would be like, it doesn't like coming at this angle. If we can do it from this angle, it's a lot easier to program. And I would be like, great, that angle works for me. The op's name was Josh. He would almost guide me saying like, hey, at 90 mils, like we're gonna see a bit of bumps on this. Like it's still working with the laws of physics.
Yeah.
And rather than fight him and be like, well, it has to be on a 90 mil, I'd be like, great, let's do a 50 mil.
Yeah.
Like, because I'm listening to the expert who does this every day. And if they're telling me something's going to be difficult or not work, I have to accept that as like, well, I have to rethink my idea then.
If you watch the commercial, you can see there is a ton of coverage. What's so impressive, you guys covered this in one day. And it seems like the way you were able to do that is you hired crew who had experience with this.
Yep.
It's a very tiny crew, all things considered, for a McDonald's commercial. And it was also you hired not only for experience, but you hired the right gear. You brought in this Mr. Robot so that you knew you could have consistency. And that's impressive to see how you were able to achieve so much in one day.
A big thing with how we made our day, actually, like the robot seems like overkill, but the repeatability of the shots actually saved us hours and hours, if not made it possible to get these shots. Because some of these moves, to do them manually and to hope that everything else would line up in terms of performance, you are going to lose many of your shots if you're just hoping the stars align.
Take me through the lighting. I want to know, you had it. I'm always impressed when you have an entire space. It can almost feel daunting when you have so many options. Sometimes when you're stuck in an actual environment, you can start to see where light is naturally motivated. You can see in the BTS, you already have like the traditional, this is very much a Nik Pilecki thing. The first half an hour I was working with on set with him, for the first time I saw him doing this, you have a tree here cutting through, which is always your little trick just to break things up.
As normal, when I'm setting up a scene, first thing I do is like, I love motivation. So we had, I believe it was a Godox 1200, which is an equivalent to an Aperture 1200D just by color. And that's kind of like our first thing coming through the window. And that like, I'm using that with the camera setup to see like how much ambient, how much does that light fill the scene? And if I like that, it's like, great, let's hold with the 1200 out our fake window with shears. And then like another thing with your fake windows, if it ever feels like they're sourcey, drape bleached muslin over the other side. And that just in a commercial setting feels like, oh, well, that's a frosted window outside. The way the sun falls into a house is it's not like the sun is coming through the top part of the window and no levels coming through the bottom. So bleach muslin helps fill that out.
Talk to me about this. I see this is a negative fill that I'm seeing on this one side, but then how did you light the rest of the interior?
So on the outside of our windows, we got hard lights. This is actually a diffusion that I'm pushing a Dyno 650, which is like a large 2x1 panel. That's going to be our ambient fill throughout the...
And it's the fill, it's not the key.
Well, I mean, I'm treating the kind of the window light as my key, and then I'm kind of like balancing things out with that. And then so nag's always going to be to frame right. A big thing I like to do, so whenever you're shooting in white kitchens or things with glossiness, you always have to be very careful on reflections. So I really had to angle our Dyno 650, be careful that I don't see it. So that's why we have a menaced armed light mat, because if you're coming in from above, then optically you're not going to get a reflection from anything coming from above. So I knew that going into like reflective surfaces, so if you're ever in a kitchen with glass windows, the more you can come from tubes or light mat above, the lower risk you have being like, I see all of our work.
Yeah, because if you had a big source light, it would start really reflecting right
Yeah.
in the camera. I think the biggest thing to think of when reflections is the more sourcey, the more tight your light is, the more chance you're going to notice it. The more diffused and bigger and softer your light is, it technically is reflecting, but it's across everything.
So you don't notice.
So
It's
you
like
don't notice
hiding
it.
in plain sight.
Yes, exactly.
It's the principle of lighting cars in studio. You almost want like a 40 by overhead. Because
So
if you
it's
have
all reflected, but then
if you have a 12 by overhead and there's just this like one square of white, you're like, what is that on the car? But open it up to 40 feet and the whole car just gets hit by it and it hides in plain sight.
was there any special treatment on the coffee spinning or on the coffee pouring here? What was your intention with these? Because it looks like you're doing like a slash of light through these.
Yep, so that would be like kind of like our little accent lights with cutters, or the kind of Lico spotlight mount where you get those cutters that you can shape the light. Like, I want to separate this from the background, so let's do a little spotlight on our hero. So you can even see with this shot here, there's a little slash coming through the middle of the scene. We have a plain old boring white countertop, clear glass, like nothing is helping us here.
But you have so many different contrast ratios, and that's why it's interesting.
Yeah, all you're looking for is like levels of interest, and a lot of times a little beam of light will do the trick, being like, I don't know if it's real, but I do like it better, and the client seems to enjoy it too. And if you ever have a beam of light and you're like, that looks fake, throw a little diffusion over it, like a very subtle diffusion.
Break it up. Put a window frame
even
in
like
front
a
of it.
wax paper.
Yeah.
And if that isn't doing the trick, put a branch in front of it. If you break it up, like get a little dingle, and if you break it up, it just makes it feel more like, oh, well, that has to be real because it's coming through a tree or a bush outside. Like, and you'll get to that point where you're like, I believe this. And if I believe it, I think the viewers will too.
Nick, I love what you've done here. It's given me confidence to walk into a white space. I often avoid it, but what I'm realizing is that if you're a little less lazy, if you diffuse the light, if you break up the light, if you think about contrast ratios, this is so important as a DP. If you're painting with pockets of light, as you can see from the still frame that I've paused on here, we have a kick off his hand, but then we have a shadow side. We have a top light coming down from his shirt. We have the shadow that you're casting. This is just white paper. We have a light that's giving a top rim light on the top of the cup here, which is giving us this edge light, but then you have that kick coming through, which is casting this unique shadow. We have his shadow. You also have a kick on the background here. Yeah, it's a lot of lights, but if you have the time, and the point is that you're highlighting a product, if you ever go see the product photography shoot that Derek and I did, that we kind of figured out on the fly, just trying to show you what two people who don't do product photography can do, you'll see that it's about not just adding more light to the scene, but being very intentional about where it's landing and asking, what is this doing? You're painting a whole image here, and the thing that you're looking for is variety.
White locations are never ideal because it's tougher to control the light, but they are a realistic thing that we all come up against, because a lot of, like, whether you're in the dock space or narrative space, a lot of times you're using locations that you have access to, and the ones you have access to, they're usually white walls. Like, they're not these nice 1950s homes with cool wallpaper. Sometimes they're the less exciting ones. So if you can learn how to tackle that, I think you can find great success.
We got an hour left, Nick. Let's punch out 2 more videos.
All right.
See you guys on the next one. Thank you, Nick. Big shout out for always bringing your wisdom, not only to this channel, but to the art of documentary. As I mentioned, the doors are opening September 10th. Don't miss out on that giveaway. Go over to Instagram. All the contest rules are there. We're giving away that Blackmagic Pixis camera and a Sigma 24-70 plus the case. It's like a full filmmaker kit. We've given away, I think, like 5 FX6s or something like that in the past. It's always Christmas around AOD. But thank you for watching it this far. If you made it this far, let me know your favorite documentary you've watched in the past 10 years. I'm actually really curious. It's actually a really great question. Right now, the documentary world needs good films. There's just too many about murder mysteries. Although if you've seen American Nightmare, I saw that on Netflix, that was pretty good. I enjoyed that. Thanks for watching, guys. And thanks again to Nick. And I'll see you on the next one, and see you inside AOD later.